We've got Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball, with us here on the program. Kendall, good morning, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Has anything happened this week?
Goodness gracious, man. How have your last, 48, 72 hours gone?
Well, let's just say that I feel like I'm a telephone operator at this point. It's been interesting. It's kind of funny. I say funny. It's been interesting in the sense of like just how this has all kind of played out over the last, the last 3 days. It's interesting. I started kind of getting wind that this was going down, I don't know, probably Monday afternoon. And, I had multiple people tell me, I don't think it's going to happen, yada, yada, yada. And then Tuesday morning, everything obviously hit the accelerator. But, I really think this is something that has been brewing for weeks. I think it's a total coincidence that A&M happened to lose 2 series after all this started brewing. I really do. I don't think it had anything to do with that. But I don't think this was some snap judgment decision where, Coach Schlossnagle said, just out of the blue, I'm going to go to Texas. Typically, it's like I tweeted this out there. Typically, with coaching searches, when a coach lands from, finishing his season and within 24 hours has a new job, there's literally zero way that thing started that day, because there's a process here, right? Like there's an agent, there's a contract that has to be reviewed. There's no way that a coach is signing a contract with 3 hours notice at a cemetery in Snook. Like people aren't stupid. So, it was a process. The thing is now is, I understand that A&M fans are mad. They should be. But here's the thing. I said this to somebody yesterday. I said, if you're A&M, you can either sit back, get really mad, sulk about it, pout about it, or you can go, you know what? Okay, if that is the way you're going to treat this school, we are going to unleash literally every amount of funds that we can from an NIL standpoint. We are going to give, without being stupid and giving him a Jimbo Fisher contract, we are going to go out and get the best possible coach. And you know what? We're going to go out there and we're going to whip this guy on the field. If you're A&M, that's what you're thinking at this point. So now it's full speed ahead, and I'm very curious to see, what A&M's able to do. I think they have some pretty big names that they can get. But, again, you got to get them to the finish line.
We're talking to Kendall Rogers here on TexAgs Radio. Kendall, let's talk about this timeline, right? So it's obvious they have to do this soon, like super soon, like today, tomorrow, the next day, right? That is obvious. Is that realistic? Can they get this wrapped up by Monday, let's say, because the portal closes Tuesday?
I think based on what I'm hearing, I think I'd be really surprised if they don't have a new head coach by Saturday. I really do. I think it's moving very fast. I think that my educated guess here would be today is a very busy day on the coaching search front, and I think by Saturday or Sunday morning, I think they've got a new baseball coach.
And do you think we will be surprised by the name?
There's some really good options. There's at least one I'm not going to mention. But, I mean, some of the names I mentioned, Brian O'Connor at Virginia would be one that would certainly be in the mix. He's a guy that has been a Virginia lifer with Notre Dame, has been to Omaha multiple times, won a national championship. The really interesting thing about O'Connor, and this is why, I had somebody, reach out to me on Twitter, go, Brian O'Connor, there's no shot he leaves. Well, by the way, never say never. It's because, like I said with Jim in Texas, never say never. Number two is the ACC is a different animal than the SEC right now. There's dissension within the ACC. So I do think some of these ACC coaches could have a little bit different outlook on things than maybe an SEC coach. And the other thing that's interesting about O'Connor is, he just signed a new 10-year deal, but guess what? From what I understand from people in Charlottesville, his buyout has actually gone down. So, he has a 10-year deal, but he has a lesser buyout. So I think he's a guy that, frankly, if I'm A&M, I'm looking at a guy like O'Connor. If I'm A&M, he's not leaving, but you've got to call Tony Vitello. He's got Aggies in his family. You've got to at least call him and be like, hey, any interest? From there, the other people I would look at, the really interesting one that I think I would at least take a gander at would be Kevin O'Sullivan. Sully's made it abundantly clear that, Florida, needs some help on the NIL front. Like, he's made it very clear. He's a guy that if he went to A&M, he would have a lot of NIL money. From what I'm hearing, a lot of NIL money. So I think there are coaches out there at the elite level that I think they would have a pretty decent shot with, assuming the numbers that I'm kind of hearing come to fruition.
It's such a weird thing to think about where we were on Monday. Yeah, and look, I had heard the same whispers you had heard as we were getting closer to that championship game, but I still wanted to believe that that wouldn't happen. What do you think about the timing of it all? Because there is no good timing. But considering he might have been thinking about that during the championship series and leaving after the whole exchange with Richard.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And number one, I'll give Richard a ton of credit. It took some cojones to go out there and do that. That's not an easy question to ask. And frankly, I was in the room and I didn't ask the question. So I give him a lot of credit for that. And now, by the way, Richard's famous. Don't let that get to his head, but he is famous. But I think I look at the timeline, and I say this. I was talking to two SEC head coaches yesterday, and again, I do not care about whether or not Schloss left A&M to go to Texas. I don't care about the rivalry thing here. But in general principle, two SEC head coaches said, if the school I was going to leaked out the day that I was playing for a national championship, that not only were they firing their coach, but, I'm the top candidate, there's no way I would go there because, in one of them, an SEC West school, the coach said, this may be my only shot to win one of these things. So, the fact that would leak out the day that I'm playing for this, what kind of people am I going to work for? So I think that, the timing is odd because I think if you're Jim and that leaks out the day that you play for the national championship, you're how is this even possible? And then all of a sudden, 24 hours later, you've taken a new job. So that begs the question. A, did they leak it out on purpose? B, and I would sincerely hope that I'm going to assume this was not the case. B, was he okay with it leaking out the day of the national championship game?
Well,
that is really what I kind of ponder on this whole thing.
Well, here's the thing. Did it even matter? Because he knew he was going and potentially weeks, months before.
Yeah, I would be floored if a coach would leave after the national championship win, if they had won the national championship and gone to their rival. But at this point, he made it abundantly clear that, he made it abundantly clear that it basically came down to the athletic director. His press conference seemed to certainly insinuate that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I don't think is really a fair shake on Trev Alberts. The guy's been there, 2 months?
Did you find Schloss to be uncomfortable yesterday?
I've known Jim forever, and, the last thing I'm going to do is just constantly bag on him. But I will say this. He did not look like somebody that was in a really happy place. Frankly, none of those guys did. It really looked like he... early, it was like I was telling somebody early, kind of looked like he's being held hostage. Nolan looked like he, frankly, he probably hadn't slept in 48 hours, but he did not look very happy. And I just thought Jim looked a little uncomfortable. I'll be honest with you. I'm sure today he feels great. Got to get out of sleep. Probably feels like he's in a great spot. Yeah, it was not a comfortable situation. But I will say that I don't think there's any way that could have been a comfortable situation. Even if you wanted to make that move, I don't think you feel comfortable about it for at least a while.
So Saturday, you think you wouldn't be surprised if they had somebody in place by Saturday?
I would not be surprised. Assuming things are kind of moving the way they are right now, I would not be surprised if they have somebody in place.
And if they have the right guy, do you think they can hold on to some of these kids that went into the portal?
No, I don't think they can. I think that there's a pretty safe bet they will. I think if they make a couple of the hires that I've heard they could possibly make, I actually would feel pretty good about their chances given some of the NIL things that were kind of, being worked on behind the scenes. So, the thing that people have to realize, and I think this is important, and I'm speaking not only A&M fans, I'm also speaking to fans from any other school who might be listening to this, is, I saw somebody going after like Mike Grahovic on Twitter last night, and I was like, man, like, come on. Because here's the thing. When there's a coaching change, a lot of the time it's these agents that are like, hey, just go in the portal and like let's see your market value, right? Like if you're Gavin Grahovic and you're one of the top players in college baseball, like why wouldn't you go in the portal? Because even if you go back there, then you at least get a pretty good idea of what your market value is. So people have to realize that just because you go in the portal doesn't mean that there's some concocted, scheme to move everybody over to Texas. No, it's a very smart decision. Because now, when you go back to A&M's NIL collective, whenever they hire a coach, it's like, hey, here is what I'm worth to other schools. So it may not be that you want the same amount of money, but like I want at least somewhat close to that.
Kendall, I got about a minute here. Is it possible? Well, first off, does Texas already have for sure plans for a new stadium or renovations or whatever? And B, is it possible that Schloss created that monster for the next head coach, and that monster is going to erupt in front of him while he's at Texas?
Well, that's the thing. I keep hearing people talk about renovations at Dish Falk. I mean, unless I'm just missing something, I haven't heard of them doing any renovations. That's the other thing about this whole deal, too, that really points to the whole, the Crystal Conte relationship, which is fine. Like, if you want to work with your best friend, I totally get it. Like, I'm not going to blame you. That should have been honestly been the narrative from day one, right? Like, hey, I just prefer to work with my buddy. But that the fact that I don't even know about renovations in Texas because they're not really in the works yet is that kind of disqualifies this whole, I'm worried about the ballpark construction, that the whole ballpark construction theory on as to why he would want to leave, right? Like if when A&M gets done with the renovations, if the ballpark's going to be way better than what USCU is, which I think USCU is perfectly fine. I would say it's a little bit nicer than Bluebell in its current state. But if what A&M is building is going to be way better, then it has nothing to do with a ballpark. So that's the one thing. What was the other question again?
I think you answered it. Just building a monster that's going to, he's building.
I will say this. I will say this in about 20 seconds. I talked to someone on Saturday in Omaha, and they told me that if this went down, that NIL money would be unleashed like no other at A&M in baseball, and whatever they needed for the ballpark and whatever they needed for the next coaching staff would be there. So, yeah, in essence, it could actually end up being a pretty good thing for A&M baseball down the road. I know it's hard to see that right now, but it actually could end up being a pretty decent thing.
Kendall, thank you so much, buddy. Talk to you soon.
You got it, guys.